Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Matt, I am the American-Canadian Gamer, and today I want to tackle a subject of heated debate among gamers everywhere. Which is better, the mouse and keyboard, or a controller? Now this is going to be a very first-person shooter-focused commentary. I will briefly touch on other genres, but the debate itself focuses mostly around FPS titles, so that's where I'm going to focus. Now, people will get involved in this debate for just a variety of reasons. Maybe they want to feel justified in their chosen interface, maybe they get a feeling of elitism out of it, but more than likely they're just trolls looking to start a fire. And now, I'm not sure if I've ever made my position in this debate evident in the past, and while I have proclaimed that my preferred platform is the PC, that doesn't mean that I will use a mouse and keyboard for everything. For first-person shooters, I will use a mouse and keyboard if I can, unless I'm doing something special. But for platformers, third-person action games like Ninja Gaiden, racing games, and many other titles, I prefer a controller. And actually, one of the strengths of the PC is the USB ports that allow you to use any input devices that you want. So why limit yourself to only a mouse and keyboard when you can use anything you want to control that game? But you find controversy in this debate when you move out of personal preference and you try to discuss which device is objectively better, which one gives the best results and why. So instead of just hopping into my opinion right away, let's look at the strengths and weaknesses of both the controller and with the keyboard and mouse, and we're going to start with the controller. With a controller, you have a simple layout that never changes. It makes it easier to play and adapt to a wide variety of games. 90% of the time, most people you play against will be using the same controller, so there is no hardware advantage. Now granted, controller modifications do exist, but not very many people actually use them. Third, controllers make it much easier to just sit on a couch, relax, and play, and it makes it much more fun if you have company over. And finally, movement in an FPS is generally much more precise since you have a 360-degree analog input as opposed to an 8-directional digital input. But the controller does have some flaws in the design. It has limited space that reduces the amount of buttons and inputs available to the player, which can result in games being less complex or requiring really strange button combinations to perform actions. The analog sticks do not grant a substantial amount of precision, which forces developers to add aim assist and acceleration mechanics to FPS titles. You're basically forced to use voice communication in order to communicate with your team, and while that's good in some instances, it is very much a double-edged sword when you get somebody really annoying and you have to go out of your way to mute them. And lastly, games rarely offer full customization for their controller layout, and while that's not really the fault of the controller itself, I will still place it as a negative since it is associated with the controller. Alright, now let's look at the strengths of a keyboard and mouse. The biggest one is full customization. Nearly every single PC title will allow you to fully customize your keys and sensitivities, and depending on the keyboard that you have, you could create macros that allow you to do even more than what they intend. Next, a mouse offers perfect precision when aiming in an FPS. There is no need for acceleration or aim assist, you simply point and shoot. You can make wide sweeping turns very quickly, and then just stop on a dime and land a headshot. And third, there are many more buttons on a keyboard. And you could kind of roll this into number one, but the fact is there are far more buttons on a keyboard than any gamepad. And some mice can have ludicrous amounts of buttons as well. Now granted, this is more beneficial for MMOs and RTS games, but being able to have all of your buttons in very convenient locations at all times is a major plus in my book. It grants you options, and options are a good thing. Okay, now let's get into the disadvantages of a mouse and keyboard. You need a lot of space to operate them. Anyone who currently has or has had a small desk can testify that limited space interferes with your gameplay experience, especially in shooters. Split-screen multiplayer is pretty much impractical, and while some games can operate with 2 players on a single keyboard, the best way to do split-screen on a keyboard is just to plug in a controller or two, and that's just inconvenient compared to a console. Next, there will be some people that will sink a ton of money into their gaming peripherals to have the best of the best. And while I don't personally believe that having a top-end gaming mouse and keyboard automatically makes you better, it can create an uneven playing field in certain circumstances. And finally, keyboards are much more limited in player movement than a controller. Keyboards are limited to 8 directions in digital input, meaning that it doesn't matter how hard you press on the key, you will always move at the same pace. Now, there are keyboards that have analog input, but for the vast majority of players, the analog stick of a controller is much better for player movement. And on a keyboard, moving diagonally does require 2 fingers in most setups, whereas a controller, it's always just your thumb. So when you compare them side by side, they both give a fair amount of advantages and disadvantages, and while the keyboard tends to offer greater flexibility and the mouse offers wonderful precision, the controller is designed from the ground up for gaming, making it adaptable, comfortable, and effective in many genres. And both options have genres that they excel at. Controllers are better for platformers, brawlers, hack and slash, fighting, sports, and racing games, whereas the keyboard and mouse is much more ideal for hotkey RPGs, MMOs, RTS, tower defense, forex strategy, most MOBAs, and simulators. Now, the controversy seems centered around first-person shooters where both a mouse and keyboard and a gamepad are viable input methods. And while a controller is more than applicable, the mouse gives an enormous boost to accuracy and reaction times that do make the mouse and keyboard objectively better for first-person shooters. You can turn faster, you can react faster, and have a much higher degree of precision. If you put 2 players of equal skill against each other, one using a gamepad and another using a keyboard and mouse, then the keyboard and mouse player will have the advantage. But that's only when you're comparing players of equal skill. And in reality, I don't believe it matters what input method you're using. You see, everyone gets so hung up on turn speed and precision, they forget that there are many more elements that affect your performance in a game. Predictions, map knowledge, positioning, communication, and teamwork, just to name a few. You can be the best shot in the world and still easily get destroyed by someone who knows exactly what they're doing. And let's look at Halo as one example. Aside from accuracy, what are some of the biggest components to success? Positioning, predictions, movement, and timing. Knowing that a rocket launcher is going to spawn in 30 seconds in the middle of a map, knowing the best route to get there, predicting your enemy's movements towards that weapon, and taking a power position in order to fight for the weapon, this is just one of endless scenarios where accuracy takes a back seat. After all, what good is your accuracy going to be when the entire enemy team is covering each other's backs, controlling the power-ups, controlling the choke points, and keeping your team locked down? The answer, shockingly, is it won't do you any good. In my honest opinion, here is the list of skills that you need to develop for playing an FPS on a competitive level. Map knowledge and control. This includes learning how the map flows, where power-ups and weapons spawn, as well as learning power positions and choke points. Knowing how a map works and where you need to go without thinking about it is very important, and it allows you to maintain map control, which is in my opinion the most important factor of any FPS. Next, we have positioning. Always try to have a superior position against your opponent, whether it means holding the high ground or forcing your opponent to expose themselves to combat you or reach their objective. Then we have movement. Understanding how fast you move and how high you can jump is one thing, but also learning how to rocket jump, grenade jump, or pull off any tricks for getting around a map is also just as important. I once heard a high-level Halo player, it might have been Naked Eli or Green Skull, say that you should be able to navigate any map while moving backwards and not thinking about it, and I completely agree. If you're playing on a competitive level, knowing the map should be second nature to you. Next, we have timing. Know the timing of weapon and power-up respawns. Being able to grab an overshield or a quad damage just as it appears is vital to maintaining map control and retaining the momentum required to win a match. Then we have prediction. Using your knowledge of the map and the game to predict your opponent's next move. I will often refer to an FPS match as a game of chess with guns. Try to stay one step ahead of your opponent at all times and beat them before you even engage them. Now, everything I just stated is, in my opinion, more important than accuracy. Now, this is assuming that you're at least a halfway decent shot, because you still need to be able to get the kill in the end. But if you play smart, you won't have to fall back on your twitch reflexes, which way too many people just rely on making their shots. They don't actually think about what they're doing, and that's what gets them killed. Smart players will always come out on top. It's about how you approach situations, how you predict your opponents, and how well you communicate that truly matter. So with that being said, it doesn't matter if you're using a mouse and a keyboard or if you're using a gamepad. What matters is how well you use your brain. So if you have the options, use whatever method of control you prefer and don't let anyone tell you that it's wrong for any reason. Now down in the comments section below, let me know if you agree with me or not, and let me know which one you prefer. Are you a mouse and keyboard kind of a person? Do you prefer a controller, or are you a weird person that tries to play first-person shooters with a steering wheel? Just let me know down below. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. My name is Matt, and I'll see you next time.